Good evening, everyone. My name is Joey Busey, and I'm a co-founder of the Citizen Speaker Series. I'd like to thank you all for attending tonight's event, featuring speaker Father Rick Iannucci.
My name is Alex Hamill, also a co-founder of the Citizen Speaker Series. Tonight you'll hear a little bit about our program, and then we'll move to a 40-minute fireside chat moderated by Cole Cherian, featuring speaker Rick Iannucci. The fireside chat will focus on his advice for young aspiring social entrepreneurs. We'll then move to a short fireside Q&A moderated by Sumant Sharma.
The Citizen Speaker Series is a student-created and student-led program dedicated to celebrating stories of positive social impact and inspiring the next generation of social entrepreneurs and activists. To fulfill this mission, Citizen sources speakers with compelling, personal stories of impact and shares their stories in an engaging manner, tailored to Malvern Prep students.
None of this would have been possible without the immense support and contributions of all of the following: Mr. Michael Reardon, Mr. Patrick Sillop, Mrs. Harriet Lapis, Mr. Luke Colameco, the Citizen Impact teams, the Malvern Prep Advancement team, Billy Mullray, and the Malvern Prep TV studio.
With that said, I'd like to introduce the moderator of tonight's fireside chat, Cole Cherian, the co-founder and chairman of the Citizen Speaker Series.
Tonight, our speaker is Father Rick Iannucci. Father Rick Iannucci is the founder, executive director, and senior instructor of Horses for Heroes, a program that helps veterans who suffer from PTSD. Father Rick is also a retired U.S. Marshal and former Green Beret.
Father Rick Iannucci spent 21 years in service, retiring in 2005. Throughout his service, he garnered multiple awards, including the Attorney General's Distinguished Service Award, the U.S. Marshal's Service Directors Award, and the National Tactical Officer Association Award of Merit. He holds degrees and postgraduate certificates from a multitude of universities, including Newman University, Baylor University, and the University of Maryland.
Following his years of service, he committed himself to helping those with PTSD. In 2010, he received the American Red Cross Real Heroes Award, and in 2014, the New Mexico Humanitarian Award for his work with veterans, active military, National Guard, and reserves. A man of faith, he is also an ordained Celtic Franciscan priest and serves in the Diocese of New Mexico and Indian Country.
With that being said, I'd like to introduce tonight's speaker, Father Rick Iannucci.
Thanks, Joey and Alex. Father Rick, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Great to be with you, Cole, and all you young men. I'm so proud of what it is that you're doing, and I don't think there's anything in the country like what you young men have decided to do, and what your Augustinian family has helped you promote.
Really appreciate that. I'm so excited for our audience online to hear about your story, your citizen moment, and your advice for aspiring social entrepreneurs. To our audience, you'll have the opportunity to ask Father Rick questions at the end of the event. So anytime throughout the event, you can just drop questions through the live chat box, and we'll get to a lot of them at the end of the fireside chat. So get ready. With that said, let's move into the moderated fireside chat. So Father Rick, while you live in Santa Fe now, you grew up not far from here in Delaware County, which is where I live. So tell us about growing up. Tell us about your early life.
Well, yes, I grew up in Delaware County, and I went to St. James for Boys, and my father was in the restaurant business there, very prominent restaurateur, and so we enjoyed growing up in Delaware County, especially around this time of holidays and where we have the Advent season upon us and things of that nature. It was always fun. I'm Italian, and I guess my dad was Italian, raised by some Armenians, and we have a large family. So we enjoyed all of the holidays that were inspired by our faith and our religious practices and our traditions, both culturally. I guess we'll be gearing up for the 7 fishes, and then for Christmas Eve, and of course our religious holidays. Advent was a big deal for us, just like Lent was a big deal for us. So it was beautiful growing up in the 50s and 60s. With those times, with those people, with those morals, with those values, with those people that had the immigrant spirit of integrity.
Awesome. I really, I think that's an amazing story about, you growing up. And I think there's a lot of parallels to a lot of Malvern kids watching online. And as I was reading and learning about your story when we were first getting to know you, one thing that I think is so admirable about you and your career is your military service. So, Father Rick, why did you get involved? Why did you enlist in the military?
Well, the short answer is I couldn't sing and dance, so that was probably the best thing. But no, we come from a long line of people where patriotism in our family meant something. It means a little bit something different in this day and age, but that's another conversation. But when we grew up, these were the things that inspired us and informed how we related to our community, and the people around us. So at some point you get the inspiration, and just as any call that you get, when you're listening to that still small voice, you respond, and so that's how we ended up in the service and I ended up in the service. My first tour was at the end of Vietnam, so things were just winding down and almost over, and so then I had a break in service and went back in again. So that was kind of the way our career bounced around.
Gotcha. And so you started in Vietnam. I know you ended up being a Green Beret. You led a special operations unit in Colombia. You've also been an instructor at West Point. So tell us a bit about how your military career, from start to finish, how it went.
Well, I don't know if you can track that, because I still have a hard time remembering it myself. But I think when you start out in the military, of course, I started out at the end of Vietnam. Vietnam had already wound down, and or they were packing things up and coming home. And I started in the Marine Corps, then got out, and then I had a break in service. And in that time between when I went back in again, I had spent some time. I told you I was a St. James Bulldog, and I went back to my high school and spent some time with the Marianist Brothers. I spent about a year there working with them as a kind of a working guy and a lay worker, and helped them build a chapel there and rebuild the chapel of our school. And then did some contracting work and ended up going back into the military around 82. So that's, I had been in the Middle East, had some extensive experience in the Middle East, and I got in the middle of that Peace for Galilee. I was in Israel, and I thought to myself, when you're in a foreign country and you see troop movement and tanks moving in and things of that nature, basically what you end up doing is saying, if they're going to war, I'm going back home and getting the right jersey on. So I ended up coming back home, and when I tried to get my old job back, they didn't have any spots for it. So a friend of mine said, look, you've been through all the airborne and scuba and all these schools. We'll take you in special forces right away. I said, yeah, but there's a but in there somewhere. I said, yeah. He says, but you got to go away for a year to the Special Forces qualification course. And so I said, well, okay, I can do that. I said, there's another but in there somewhere I detect in your voice, Sarge. And he said, yeah, you got to leave Thursday. I said, well, it's Tuesday. He says, yeah. What's your question? So anyway, that's how you end up doing these things. And but one of the toughest schools, and I'm a little guy, so for me, these schools were always physically tough, as well as mentally and tough in a lot of ways, and spiritually tough too. They try your souls.
Well, Father Rick, it's an amazing story of service, and we thank you for that service. We've actually had a speaker before who's served in the military, Wes Moore, and I'm going to ask you.
Yeah, I heard Wes. I heard Wes is show, and that was great.
Well, thank you. I'm going to ask you a question that I asked him last spring, which is, what is one thing that you learned in the military that impacts the way you serve others in your community today?
Well, I don't think there's any one thing, but if I may, there's a couple things. The first thing is resilience. Learning your own level of resilience, relying on your own personal integrity, and doing things with humility. I would think that the three things that characterize your depth of service when those things occur, I would say I would break it down into three pieces, and this is good leadership for your guys too. The first thing I would say is if they are going to be good servant leaders, they have to be authentic. There's a level of authenticity like Wes Moore had and people like that have that you just can't fake that. You just can't. And we're from Delaware, being Delaware County guys, our BS meters are way up there, so we kind of get all that, The second thing is relevance. And this carried through to teaching at West Point and teaching all the years I taught in special operations. So that what you're doing has to be relevant to who you're working with. If you're not relevant to what you're working with, if you're not making sense to them, they're going to turn you off. You're not going to get turned on. You have to be relevant to in special forces, we work with indigenous personnel all the time. If you can't relate to them in some form or fashion, then you're not going to get your mission accomplished at any level. And the final thing is everything that you do has to be done with compassion. And that's where our training that you're getting at Malvern, that I got at St. James, and then at Newman College, or Newman University, where I graduated from. Those are, the Franciscans over there at Newman are wonderful too. But if you have those three elements, authenticity, relevance, and compassion, you will be set to accomplish just about any task or mission that the government or school or some of your tougher props here can throw at you.
Well, Father Rick, those are great lessons that I think, I'm certainly going to, reflect on when I get home, and I'm sure a ton of kids in our audience and adults are going to reflect on after you're done speaking. So thank you. One thing about you, in addition to your military service, is that you are the Southwest Provincial of the Order of Celtic Franciscans. So talk to us a bit about how you got involved in being ordained and how you believe you've made an impact on your community in this way.
Well, I have always, as I said before, I started out my career as a Marianist, and so I always had a calling. I felt a calling. Responding to that calling for me has been essentially seamless. People say, you were a Green Beret and now you're a Franciscan. They're like trying to capture that, figure that out. And for me, again, it's seamless. If you look at St. Francis, for instance, St. Francis was a knight, a soldier, cavalry soldier, as a matter of fact, served in the Crusades, came back, and then served in the war in Perugia. He was a prisoner of war. When he came back from those conflicts, he had what we would now have to qualify, although they didn't have the DSM-5 then, the Diagnostic Statistic Manual 5 then, to give him a rating. We would say he had a form of PTSD, and we've reframed PTSD to say, we call it now the other side of PTSD, post-traumatic spiritual dissonance, the unseen wounds of war. And these are the things that I started seeing as I got back, and I retired from my work in Columbia, And after coming out of a guerrilla war there, it it was a natural response for me. I at the time was a widower, and I was saying, you know, I really feel this strong calling and this strong urging, and you know, I think that that's why the good Lord gave us 2 ears to listen and 1 mouth to talk, so that we could listen probably twice as much, you know, as we as we're speaking. But anyway, I ended up applying to seminary, thinking, well, they're never going to take me. I'm too old. I'm too whatever, and you know. But then I said, you know what? As St. Augustine said, let God be God. Let him do his thing. You know, who do you? How arrogant do you think you are that you just get a chance to, you know, do anything other than what you're told? You know, so that's how I ended up back in seminary, and I found a group of men that are just phenomenal group of men, and my presiding bishop, or our minister general, is a war hero in my eyes. He was in Iraq and Afghanistan, and for his trouble there, he received a Bronze Star in each theater of war. And when he got a hold of me, he recognized that we were kindred spirits, or as we say in the Celtic Orthodoxy, we are anam cara, we are soul friends. And soul friends is almost like a Native American thing, where it's very, very deep. It's not just buddies. It's almost like the Italians, combare, gomare, you know, these are serious tasks and assignments that you get when someone places that kind of, or reposes that kind of trust in you, you know. And so I went along, we helped restructure and reformed a little bit about our order, and the next thing I knew, he was saying, hey, we're splitting Texas off of here, and the next thing I knew, I was being consecrated as a provincial and the bishop here. So you know, I guess I got fast tracked, if that's what you want to say. But I guess he says, how much shelf life do we got on this guy? So let's get the most out of him while he's still kicking.
Father Rick, that's an amazing part of your story. And one thing that's so interesting about you is that as you read your bio, there keeps more and more interesting parts of your story keep appearing. So what I'd like to talk about next is Horses for Heroes. Can you tell us a bit about what Horses for Heroes is, and tell us about the journey that you and your wife took to launch this amazing program?
Well, as you know, we're Orthodox like the Maronites and some of the other 26 other Catholic rites that were allowed to be married. And I was able to find a beautiful woman. As you know, I lost my first wife, and then I met a beautiful woman, and I still maintain that her eyesight is something to be desired, because we talked about her wanting to get new glasses, and I tried to insist that she didn't get new glasses right now, and she asked me why. I said, well, I said, Nancy, so right now you think I'm Al Pacino. I said, if you get new glasses, you might realize I'm Danny DeVito, you know, so, you know, but she's a wonderful woman. She's a trauma and grief specialist, and we joined forces as we started peeling the onion away and started interviewing hundreds of men and women that came back from Iraq and Afghanistan. We started with humble beginnings, and we're now in our 14th year of Horses for Heroes, and people can read about us, Horses for Heroes, HEROES, horsesforheroes.org. And I mentioned this earlier. She and I were, you know, being the trauma therapist that she is, she and I started looking at these men and women coming back, and we're looking and we're saying, they don't have the same symptoms that we're looking at, that this sheet is saying they have. And what we found is that they had something that was even a deeper wound, an unseen wound. And those wounds are what we ended up calling and coining post-traumatic spiritual dissonance, the other side of PTSD. Um, One of the things we dedicated this program to doing is using the horse. And as our Native American brothers and sisters say, the horse is a transcendent gift from God to let us bridge between the physical world and the spiritual world. So the horses have been a big part of this ranch. And so we dedicated the entire ranch to this work and this ministry, if you will. The whole healing that we insisted on having had all these elements in it, and the spiritual element was a huge part of that. So we have been working with, and as the years go by, we start working with veterans who have unanticipated challenges. You know, we're working with men and women who've been deployed so many times they forgot, they can't even count how many times they've been deployed. And so we've started working with, and as a result of that, some of their relationships, no surprise, are fractured. The relationship with their spouse. You know, you don't go to Iraq or Afghanistan or back and forth 9 times and then come home and say, "Gee, honey, what's for dinner?" You know, or if you do my laundry, you know, I want to flip the game on. You know, and then, you know, there are certain requirements that you have. If you read St. Paul, he'll tell us, give us our marching orders a little bit about how to maintain that connection with a good woman and a good wife, and how we have to reinforce those relationships positively, and with our children. So these are some of the things that we found and that we're addressing even now. We're working with active duty military. We work with the National Guard chaplains. Being an ex-Green or former Green Beret, I bring a lot of that back to the ministry, you know, to how I approach everything. So we never close. We worked on 3 suicides this year, and to Nancy's credit, we had a family here for a week, and one of the children was, you know, had some issues, and you know, fortunately we were able to build a bunkhouse here, so we have lodging, so we have a resident program. And by the way, that doubles as our St. Edith's seminary when in the off days when they're not using that. So talk about multitasking. Did I answer your question?
Yes, Father Rick. And it's truly amazing the work you do. So it might be helpful to just, you know, if you know, a veteran comes to the Horses for Heroes Ranch in Santa Fe, what is that process to recovery from the post-traumatic spiritual dissonance that he's experiencing look like through your program?
Well, the good thing about what we have done here is, and if you go on our website, you can see our gallery and see some of the pictures of how we operate. But one of the things that we do is we do an intake. And by the way, everything that we do is totally free. They pay for nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. We stock the refrigerators for them. And I cook lunch every day for everybody. So, you know, if they weren't fond of Italian cuisine, they get that way pretty soon, because that's my repertoire, you know. But no, they come in and they apply. We actually use the Zoom to interview them and talk with them, because they come from all over the nation, all over the country. And we want to make sure that, and we're small enough to be effective and large enough to be efficient in our size and scale and scope. So what we're able to do is essentially tailor make whatever happened to you. We talk about retooling that. That's what our skill set restructuring concept does. We take what they did in the military. We look, we find out, we dig down, and Nancy's, being a Gestaltist, can dig down and find out a lot of things about what was biting them on the tail, you know, and how they got from where they were through their childhood, much like we're talking now, and then how they ended up with in that dissonant condition that they're in. We peel the labels away. We don't let them suffer in silence, and we tell them, we can't do this for you, but we'll do it with you, and you can count on that. Once they get here, then we work with horses, usually in the morning. I cook lunch every day. We eat a great meal. We all sit around the table, and one of the things that we don't proselytize here, by the way, either. We let things take a natural course. You saw me on the Zoom yesterday when we were chatting. I was in cowboy overalls, and I just literally came in out of the corrals working with the horses. We have one of our horses we've been doctoring. So, but anyway, we let them work with the horses. We let them be at liberty in the round pen, and then they work their way up. And a lot of it's driven with the horses, anyways, driven by their own athleticism and what path they're taking. Then we're able to, again, custom make what their needs are. We listen to them, something that a lot of organizations, God bless them all for helping out, but what they've been failing to do is actually hearing what they're listening to and then responding to that. Once we get a handle on what their journey is, that way we can start custom making the modules for how we're going to bring them around. If they need pastoral, if they're having a crisis of faith, we've got a chapel right here. We can sit in the chapel. They can join me in my morning prayers. I do the morning Celtic benediction every morning, and so they can join me if they want to get up 0 dark 30 and help me feed the horses, and then do my morning, my morning hours in the and then Vespers at night. So we do that here. We have the ability to do that here. If they want to unburden themselves and talk a little bit about that to me. If not, they may want to work on some early childhood things that Nancy's a specialist in, and she's able to peel away, again, a lot of those onions so that they can get to the bottom of what might have even happened before they went in the service. So it's pretty active. And then if it's that time of year where we're doing spring branding or fall gather, we gather up, we saddle up and we do that work with our area, our program partner ranches in the area.
Well, it's really such an amazing process that you guys have that I know truly impacts the lives of so many military veterans and service members that have given so much to us as Americans, and it's really awesome that you guys are giving back to them. Father Rick, I know that there's been recently a lot's gone on in Afghanistan, and we don't want to go into the political implications of that, but
sure.
What have been the consequences of what's happened in Afghanistan to your Horses for Heroes program?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. And I'll tell you, a lot of the men and women feel betrayed, and they feel betrayed by our commander in chief. They feel betrayed by, it fits right in with the spiritual dissonance that we talk about, and it's post-trauma. They've already made it back. They were well on their way. They were patriots, and now they feel like what they did had no meaning, no value. So we're getting calls all the time, and people want to revisit that, and they want to talk a little bit about what happened. What happened to them? What happened to the world? How did they end up there? What will we? So those are some of the things that that they are suffering with. Now, our post-traumatic spiritual dissonance fits right in, and let me explain. The things that we saw was to come up with this concept and understand that were either something that they saw, they did themselves, a betrayal of compassion by command, any combination of those things that they may have been part of, that now they're back so many years and they're starting to again bite them on the tail, and now they've got to unburden themselves with that. And so we have to work in whole health, in a whole health capacity, body, mind, and spirit. And the spiritual part is getting them to understand that self-forgiveness is not selfish. And if they are burdened with that, they really have to unburden themselves and forgive themselves. As Scripture says in Matthew, love God as you love yourself. Love others as you love yourself. And what did they think, that Jesus was bluffing when he said that? No, he was giving us a command and a directive to be able to provide that self-care that is not selfish. But the other part that they have to do, and this is the tricky part, and that's forgive the other. That's not to condone what happened in combat or what the bad guys did to them over there and how they were, we had guys that have really suffered with having a lot of their men killed, and then they caught the bad guys, and then maybe that didn't go so well for the bad guys after that. But they have to get to a level of forgiveness where, again, they don't have to condone what happened, but they have to release themselves from and forgive that other person for what they've done. As it's in the prayer that our Lord taught us, as we forgive those who trespass against us, who've done us ugly or done us wrong. So these are our scriptural guidelines. These are our navigational beacons, our left and right boundaries. They're our aiming stakes, as the military guys call them, that we can function under to help navigate that.
Thank you, Father Rick. Now, shifting gears a little bit, I know you also work with students and faculty at Villanova University, right near us, to develop a clean water aquifer system for Native Americans on the Navajo reservation near you guys. Can you talk a bit about what that process has been like and the work you're doing for those Native Americans?
You bet. So your fellow Augies that are right up the street from you, there's an amazing team headed by Dr. Jordan Ermelio, who conceptually put together something called the Humanitarian Engineering Initiative. It's now a division, I believe. If you're not familiar with it, treat yourself, go online and see what these amazing grads and post-grad folks are doing in the Augustinian tradition. I'd like to take ownership for them because I believe it's very Franciscan in nature as well, but I'll let them be where they are at Villanova. But anyway,
some credit.
I'd say
give the Augustinians some credit.
But no, obviously all credit to them. No, but anyway, through an alum over there, a beautiful friend of my father's, even Bob Demento, he called us on the phone and told us about this project, and Mr. Kalameka was involved in this. And when he gets involved in something, he ain't bluffing because he don't have time to bluff. But in any event, we were talking about the needs and how we move forward with our program and our project, and they've been big fans of ours for quite a while. And I said, listen, I went online and I saw what they were doing, water projects in third world nations and anti-demining projects in Cambodia. And so they're using their engineering in a humanitarian, faith-based way. And I thought, this is so parallel to what we're doing with the way we're running our mission here. And I said, so I got on the phone, I said, I am okay here on this ranch. We're good. We've got our water. We've got this and that. I said, however, 10 years ago, Nancy and I helped one of our veterans start a ranch on the Navajo reservation. He came through our program, one of the first guys that came through our program about 12 years ago. And what he's an amputee, wounded in Iraq, a young man of great faith. We happen to be godparents to his one of his daughters, by the way, which is quite an honor, not only with the Italians but with the Navajo as well. But in any event, we helped him start this ranch on the Navajo reservation. We gifted him his first influx of seed stock, being cattle. We helped him work with the NRCS, the Department of Agriculture, in getting fencing up, and we've just been working on plussing that operation up for many years. We gave him one of our great ranch horses so that he could, while his younger horses were being raised, he had something to ride and work with. So what we discovered was that he was driving as his livestock operation grew. He was almost supporting almost 5 families on the res there. And what we discovered was that he was driving 75 miles, sometimes twice a day, to get water so he could work his cattle, have potable water for his families, and help grow some of his alfalfa. So when I explained that to Dr. Emilio, he was like, we'll be out like whenever we, they bought right into it. They got it. We had him on a Zoom. And then we did some proposals, and his Cracker Jack team, there's a young lady named Jess there that is Hewitt, and she's just amazing. The whole team is absolutely amazing. Anyway, we came up with a plan to come out and examine the pre-existing system that was there, and some of the things that the NRCS wasn't stepping up for and the reservation wasn't providing. And we just said, you know what? We're not going to worry about what anybody else is doing. We're going to do what we do. And that takes us to, a very Franciscan proverb from Francis, a quote: "Start by doing what's necessary, then do what's possible." And suddenly you're doing, what previously was looked at was impossible. And so that's what we've been working on. They've made their first trip out here. They just didn't click their fingers. These young people did an incredible amount of research, a lot of backgrounding, and they know what they're doing. They came out, they hit the ground running this past October. They did recharge rates. They studied systems that were that had not been touched in 30-some years, 3 decades of misuse, abandonment, and things of that nature. And then just last week, they came up with their first working plan of basically, and we did again on Zoom. We had Alroy on Zoom, and they were on Zoom, and they showed us a proposal of what they had come up with. And I have to say, nothing short of brilliant. Now, if we can put this faith into action, we got something going. And I think we can do it. And God bless them. I mean, God bless them every day.
It's incredible. The innovation is incredible. And Father Rick, I was talking to you on Zoom yesterday, and there's one sort of question that we ask all of our podcast guests, speakers, and that's the citizen moment. So the citizen moment is what we believe is the most powerful way to share stories of positive social impact, and that is to share stories centered around this citizen moment. The citizen moment is the point in one's journey at which he or she commits to making an impact. So Father Rick, is there a citizen moment in your journey? Is there a specific moment? Are there a couple citizen moments? What was your citizen moment?
Wow, another great question. And I would have to say, I think my citizen moments are seamless. We're in the middle of Advent right now. We're in the 3rd week of Advent. Today's the feast of St. John of the Cross, and if we look at that today, but what does the season of Advent tell us? The season of Advent tells us about the citizen moment. What's that citizen moment? The citizen moment is when you say yes, when Mary said yes, deciding what was possible, not what was probable. Advent is the citizen moment when you do decide each and every time and you say yes. It could be also called your Michael Corleone moment, when they say, no matter how I try to get out, they drag me back in. But these are the things that what we say yes to. It's your Mary and Martha moment. If you know scripture, in Luke, you can talk about that in Luke 10. So it's the time when you constantly say yes. You continue to say yes. So as you play your own tape back, those are the things that Augustine said another thing: trust the past to the mercy of God and the present to His love, and the future to His providence. And so those things will, if you're constantly working out of your faith tradition, your faith practice, constantly saying yes, I think those are your citizen moments, the moments that you say yes to your country, your community, your tribe, your state, your faith, your order, your family, and yourself. These are times that we're blessed with. These are divine appointments. Or there's a Irish priest, John O'Donoghue, that said, these are quiet miracles when these things happen to you that require no attention. But as we respond to them, they take on a life of their own.
Well, Father Rick,
don't squander those moments. Don't squander those opportunities to say yes, guys and ladies.
Well, Father Rick, I think you might have a better understanding of what a citizen moment is than we do over here at Citizen, after hearing that super thoughtful response. But I've had a great time talking with you and really learning about your story. We're now going to open it up to questions that our audience has asked you through the virtual chat feature throughout the talk, moderated by my friend and teammate, Sumant Sharma.
So, hi Father Rick. As Cole introduced me, I'm a co-founder of the Citizen Speaker Series. My name is Sumant Sharma, and I'm a current senior here at Malvern Prep. Basically, this is a 20-minute audience Q&A. We just want to get through as many of these questions as possible, so don't worry about dwelling on the answer too much. Okay. So, our first question is a personal question of mine. When I think of cowboys, I think of like old Western movies with killer soundtracks. And I know that's not a realistic representation of what cowboys are today, but your website online described you as a cowboy. So what does that mean to you?
Well, obviously a cowboy out here it has a real meaning. If you're a hand out here, you're doing the work that has to be done. But there's a lot to be said about the cowboy code, and these are the codes of integrity, honesty, saying what you mean, all the things that if you don't do that, well, I talked a little bit about that earlier, authenticity, relevance, and doing things with compassion, and that's taking care of your animals the way, you can be a Franciscan cowboy and be very kind to your livestock, your birds, we have a bird bath out here that's incredible, that all my cowboys love, and they come here and see birds from all over the world that fly in here on their way south. So I think being a cowboy is being authentic, knowing what to do, having that personal integrity, maintaining your values, and I guess saying less and doing more.
Yeah, I love that quote. And speaking of authenticity, our next question is from Mrs. Heppelman, and she asked.
I'm sorry. Slow down.
Our next question is from Mrs. Heppelman. She's asking, what advice would you give to young men at Malvern on how to be authentic while dealing with the everyday challenges of being a teenager?
A good question. Here, and I'm going to quote St. Augustine again. Right is right, even when no one's doing it, and wrong is wrong, even if everyone's doing it. So, that's your patron saint. I'm not making that up, but that's a mantra that I have used in my life, no matter what, right is right and wrong is wrong, no matter what. At some point, again, this is the cowboy code as well. You have to stand for something. You have to have personal values that are unshakable, unflappable. I'm not saying that you have to be the kind of person that's so rigid that you can't be open, but that's where the compassion part comes in. The empathy part, understanding the other. As my Native Americans say over here in this part of the country, you don't know anybody until you've walked a mile in their moccasins, and so those are the things that we have to do. Have compassion for that other, understand what it is, listen to that person. I do a class for my police officers out here. I'm an ex-SWAT guy, so I have a little bit of street creds with them, and I do a class for them now as a pre called Responding with Reverence. And that talks about dignity, and that talks about the way that you respond in your world when you're working and when you're doing things, when you're studying, when you're working, when you're in the cafeteria, when you're on the street. It's not just when you take the tie off and leave Malvern and you go out into, Radnor somewhere, wherever you're going to go. It's the way that you are, not the things that you do so much, but those things are how you conduct yourself on a daily basis. That spiritual comportment that you have, that's driven by compassion, authenticity, and relevance, like we talked about before. Those are the things I would remind everybody as young people to do. And then honor your elders. Listen to your folks, not in a corny way. And I'm not quoting the commandments, honor your father and your mother. That's a commandment. This is something that straps onto that dovetails to that. And that is, there's a certain wisdom and tradition that we need to know that you don't know yet. Your folks made a lot of mistakes to get you guys here. I know what it costs to go there, to go where you go. It's the price of a master's degree Master's of Divinity in most schools. But what you have to understand is that they paid for the mistakes already to get you where you are. Most parents will allow you to make new mistakes, but you can't pay for the ones that they already own.
That is absolutely stellar advice, Father Rick. Our next question comes from Carter Deves, and he asked, as someone who's developed an extremely variegated resume and continues to do so, what advice would you give to people who feel like they're getting involved too late?
Well, first of all, it's never too late to do anything that you're driven to do, that you're inspired to do, that you're motivated to do, that you have the drive and desire, the knowledge. There are certain practicalities that obviously that drive the train. There's no question about that. I would probably not want to go back, again and do the path that I did. Let me take that back. Studying at the graduate level when you're older is a little tough, but if you're driven to do that, you've got the motivation to do that, drive on, go for it. Do all you can do. Do what's possible, not what's probable. As you get older, you're limited. I'm not as, I'm maybe not as hanging and banging as I used to be when I was a young guy, but when the truckload of hay gets here and I've got to start slinging 70-pound bales, you have to do what you have to do. But it's not just the physical stuff, it's the mental stuff. Never too old to do that. Never too old to believe in yourself enough to make change and to make things happen in your life.
All right. Our next question is a little more lighthearted, and it comes from Mrs. Sheridan. She asks, what's your go-to Italian dish?
Oh, that's hands down. I do a fettuccine con pollo piselli. That is my go-to Italian dish. I take a breast of chicken, I slice it down, I dust it in flour. While I'm doing that, I've got the capellini cooking, and I do some butter and olive oil, and I saute the chicken till they're nice and kind of crispy, crusty. Sometimes I use a little leek in there, which is always nice too. And then I deglaze it when it's finished with a little bit of white wine, let that cook off. Some nice good chicken stock or vegetable stock, whatever you like. Make a nice sauce there. You can add a little cream if you want, or a little mascarpone cheese to thicken up the sauce. And then I drain that capellini, put that all together. I'm sorry, I poach my peas in a little stock beforehand, and then add them to the end of the dish. Toss everything together, loaf of crusty bread, and people they fall in love with you.
I love how you knew all of that off the top of your head. That's incredible. Our next question comes from Brian Charlone, and he asks, how often do you see soul friends in the younger generation? Has it increased or decreased over the past years?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand the first part.
How often do you see soul friends in the younger generation?
Do I see soul friends?
Yeah.
My Anamkaras? Oh, I have to tell you, I met a soul friend in Cole, and that's in progress. I invited Cole and your whole team out to the ranch so that you guys could ski on winter break if you like. So, but that's what soul friends do with one another. They prop up. In Proverbs, there's a 27:17 tells us, as iron sharpens iron, men sharpen each other, or people sharpen each other. It applies to women too. We sharpen each other, and we're responsible to do that. We're responsible to maintain that, that anamkara, all the way back to Proverbs. That's our directive.
I was actually looking at that quote from your website earlier today. I love it. Our next question comes from Peter Schwab, and he asks, how old were you when you learned how to cowboy? And I'm assuming that means like all the technical stuff, like horseback riding and things like that.
Well, actually, I was raised in the back part of Delaware County, almost in Chester County, and I had horses since I was 12 years old. So what a lot of people don't realize is that the King Ranch of Texas fame actually had a ranch out in Chester County, almost in Lancaster County, in a place called Buckdoe, and they actually ran a rail spike all the way from the Pennsylvania Railroad all the way in to where they had all that acreage out there, and they raised cattle. So I had an opportunity to meet cowboys from Texas, early on in my teens, 16 and up and everything. So those guys, they spoke a little differently than we spoke. Obviously we have a regional, our regional accents in this area, Delaware County. But basically, I started working with horses, and it's been my salvation, my go-to, and I knew the value and the blessing of having those animals. So I've had horses essentially since I was 12 years old, and that's 1967, by the way. So,
Wow. All right. My last question is, how does your work as a minister go in tandem with your work as an advocate for mental health?
all our work that surrounds us, it's seamless and it dovetails. They go hand in hand. One of the things that we do here that's important is we peel labels away. My Nancy is the master of disaster, I call her. We have people here and they say, I'm this, I'm that, I'm schizophrenic, and Nancy says, really? And she says, and she has a unique way, we both have a unique way of peeling those labels off people so that they don't inculcate or incarcerate or paralyze themselves with labels that really don't apply to anything in their real universe. We ask them some simple questions. Is it true? Ask yourself, is that true? Do you believe that? And sometimes they just rock back, and with some simple questions, these mental health issues have a way of getting peeled away. And one of the things that we teach people here to do, and I learned it from Nancy, is teaching these men and women, these veterans, how to go to the VA and be their own advocates. A lot of what the VA does is medicate you. That's their answer. You have this, and this. Okay, this pill will get you there. We inform the veterans and instruct them and give them tools so they can be their own advocates. And what happens then is that then they're able to go to the doctor and say, because we tell them how to make a plan. Okay, doc, I know you put me on this green and yellow pill. Okay, what's my exit plan? Well, what do you mean your exit plan? My exit plan to get off of it. Oh, so we allow our people, especially with mental health concerns or issues or diagnoses that are absurd, how to be their own advocates. We work with them through that. Now, that's not to say we're poo-pooing any mental issues. There are many, they do exist, but they have been abused. The labels have been abused over so many years. We see it every day. We're in the fields. This is an actual mental health laboratory, if you will. And so that's how we respond to that. Did I answer your question correctly?
Yeah, that was perfect.
Okay.
So with that last question, it's been a blast talking with you, Father Rick. I'd like to reintroduce Cole Charian so we can conclude this night.
Okay.
Father Rick, I had an amazing time talking with you and really learning from you. I think I'm definitely going to fly out to Santa Fe so you can cook me some nice Italian food and we can go skiing and talk about, changing lives through God, like you're talking.
Absolutely, brother. You guys are always welcome. You're doing God's work. You're the hands and feet, as Augustine says too. The hands and feet of God. He has nothing but ours to work with. So you guys have to drive on. You have to continue the mission.
Father Rick, as I said, it was amazing to share your story, your advice for social entrepreneurs, and your citizen moment. Thank you again to our audience for participating. And before we close out, I know Father Rick had some final words he wanted to share with our audience.
Well, in the season of Advent, I'd like to do a small prayer and close our session, our time together. And so we'll pray in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. O great mystery, creator of all humankind, who keeps us on our journey and marks the horizon of our destiny, love us through our journey toward tomorrow. Son of God, divine leader and keeper of the maps, show us not the whole road at once, but give us the distance to be gained in single steps. Spirit of God, who holds the inner compass, may your presence on the journey awaken trust within us when we don't know what lies around the bend. Bless us, our state, our nation, our world, our planet, to this uncertain step, and then we shall find the step more certain, one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, one step at a time. Amen.
Father Rick, thank you again. Tonight was wonderful. And thank you to our audience for participating in the Winter 2021 event of the Citizen Speaker Series featuring Father Rick Iannucci. Make sure to listen to our podcast, the My Citizen Moment podcast, which profiles members of the Malvern community making an impact every other Saturday at 9 a.m. You can find that on every major podcast platform. We've got a library of those podcasts on every major podcast platform, and we're going to be starting up with new content in the next 2 weeks. Coming back in January, we also have a new podcast studio on campus that we'll be filming from. We're so excited to have more speaker events in spring 2022, be back on our home court in the Duffy Arts Center, and see all you in person, and to hear updates, to see when those events are going to be, and to stay in tune with everything Citizen. Follow our Instagram @Citizen and keep up with our website, citizen.org. Thank you all. I'm so glad we were able to celebrate Rick's story of social impact and hopefully inspire you to find your citizen moment. Thank you.